Welcome everyone to the first, and maybe only, depending on how this actually goes, episode of Obsessed and So Obscure, a Matt Berry music podcast. And the name is actually appropriate due to our level of obsession and also how obscure this is going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty obscure. Maybe a total of 5 listeners if we're lucky. What do you think?
If we're lucky.
Yeah.
Two of them are our husbands.
3 of them
so
being
yeah.
our husbands. Exactly.
It's also obscure because we are based in the United States and Canada. 2 of us are in the U.S. Courtney and I are in the U.S. and Tara is in Canada. And it's not like you can just walk into any record store and be like, hey, I want to buy a Matt Berry record, because they just don't know who he is here at all. So everything that we order is either from Acid Jazz directly in the UK or third parties, usually in the UK, which means seeking out and a lot of shipping costs, because shipping to the United States and Canada is a bitch. So
It's more than the record every time, pretty much.
yes, usually the shipping costs more than the actual item you're purchasing. So that's always fun. So it takes some effort.
Exactly.
So should we introduce ourselves?
Let's
Yeah,
do
that
it.
seems like something we should probably do.
Okay, shoot.
I'll go first. Why not? My name is Tara, and I have been listening to Matt Berry. Okay, so first it started off where my husband and I, we really like obscure, comedies, and especially like British comedies. So we used to watch the IT Crowd, and I think, we watched probably 3 or 4 times, and we were watching Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, and One Track Lover got stuck in my head, and I ended up YouTubing it and listened to it 3 or 4 times, as you do. And as I walked away from the computer for a while or something, it started auto-playing something from Opium. And I'm pretty sure it was Hot Dog, which is still one of my favorite songs from him, just because of the nostalgia. And it was just like, what? Like, he actually is like a real musician? And I immediately, it was back in I want to say 2009. So I got on the YouTube to MP3 converter website and downloaded the entirety of Opium. And I had it on my phone like that. This was before Spotify, maybe it wasn't actually before Spotify, but it's before I knew about Spotify. And I just listened to it over and over and over again. That is definitely one of the albums, just out of any album in the world, that I have listened to the most. I was obsessed with it. Again, great name for the podcast, because very obsessed. And it just went from there, and I've been a huge fan ever since. And at the time, I only got into vinyl, I want to say 4 years ago. I wasn't really into vinyl, so unfortunately I missed all of the releases, because I've been a fan for a long time. I could have caught so many of the releases as they came out, but I was vinyl, who listens to vinyl? Everybody now, everybody who's cool listens to vinyl. Okay, so it's been a long time. So I was really glad to meet you gals, because it's nice to know other people who are as obsessed.
And I should say, the way that we met, there is a Matt Berry Appreciation fan page on Facebook, which has over 40,000 members on it.
Wow.
And Tara, you decided to spin off and create a Matt Berry Music Lovers fan page. And Courtney and I jumped right on that as soon as she created it. It was February of last year. So we jumped right on that, and now there's 1,200 people in that group. So, and it's awesome because it's people from all over the world, which is really, really cool. So,
and it's so focused on his music. That's the thing. I was really into the appreciation group, and Joan Stevenson is, she made that group, and she's amazing. She's the guru. She knows everything about Matt. And she actually, at one point, I had messaged her about something, one of her old podcasts about Matt, I think. Actually, you know what? I think I was messaging her about Jackpot, which is the focus of this podcast. And she was like, well, do you want me to like promote your Matt Berry's Music Lovers fan, like, you know, fan page on my group? And I was like, yeah, go ahead. And it went from like 50 people to like what, you know, it's kind of been accumulating since then. So yeah, it's been really cool. And it's just a really great group because there's no memes. It's just literally all about the music.
We just talk about music, and everybody is very, I think we all have the same thought about that too. We don't want it to be just a general fan page. So I think it's just an understanding between all 1,200 people in the group that this is about the music. If you want to talk about other stuff, go in the other group, which is fine. Yeah. That's great. I mean, Joan is like Matt Berry fan number 0. So she's like the guru. I call her the godmother of Matt Berry fandom because everything I learned,
American ambassador, really.
I learned from her. Yeah. Right, American ambassador. Perfect way of saying that. But so Tara, what was the first album that you bought of his, officially purchased?
It was, I want to say it was actually The Small Hours.
Really?
Because that was like right around the time that I got into vinyl. And like the first thing, as soon as I got like a first record player, I was like, what is Matt Berry putting out right now? And I'm pretty sure it was The Small Hours. So I got that. And then immediately after that, I started my search for Opium, which that's going nowhere. I will probably never find Opium. And then I got Witch Hazel. No, it might have been Kill the Wolf, actually, is the first one.
Kill the Wolf.
Yeah.
I have Opium. Anyways.
Oh, yeah.
My first.
I'm so jealous.
It's still sealed, though. My first album that I got was Phantom Birds because I am fairly new to Matt Berry. My name is Jessie, by the way. I'm fairly new to Matt Berry fandom. I've only been a fan for a couple of years. Prior to that, I didn't even know who he was. So I know. During lockdown, or I mean, this closest thing we had to lockdown in Florida, which was nothing. But, you know, being the responsible human that I am, I stayed home. And I watched Netflix as everybody else on the planet was doing. And I was starting to run out of Netflix to watch. So I was like, hey, this looks good. I saw the IT Crowd. And Chris O'Dowd is in it. And I'm like, I really like Chris O'Dowd. I've loved him since Bridesmaids. And then I've sought out other stuff that he's been in since then. So I watched it. And, yeah, my life changed in episode 2 of season 2. But I didn't know that yet. So I finished watching the IT Crowd really fast because it's so funny.
Yes.
But as soon as I was done watching that, which was the end of 2020, it was December 2020 when I finished it. I was sitting at my desk. I was working. I always have some sort of TV going in the background or music. That day it happened to be TV. And I heard a very familiar voice on an Advil commercial. I'm like, oh my God. I think that's the guy from the IT Crowd. Still did not know his name at this point.
Yeah.
So I think that's I think that's the same guy. So
that's Rhythm. Yeah.
I went to IMDb, as I always do. It's my first source of information for anything in the entertainment business. And I was like, typed in IT Crowd. I was like, okay, his name is Matt Berry. And then I like looked up the Advil commercial info and I said, okay, same guy. I'm like, that's so crazy.
Yep.
Because that's a distinct voice. And then probably the next day, I was like, I have to start watching What We Do in the Shadows. I keep seeing commercials for it. Season 2 had already ended. I really wanted to watch it. Turn it on. What do you know? Matt Berry again. I had no idea he was in that. So I'm like, all right, well, clearly the universe is trying to tell me something. I need to look into this guy. So I went on to IMDb again. And this show is not sponsored by IMDb. I just am a big fan.
IMDb, if you
we
want
should
to
hit them
sponsor.
up.
Yes, if you would like to, IMDb, if you would like to sponsor us, please
We're willing
reach
to
out.
talk.
Yeah.
We are at Obsessed Obscure on all social media platforms. So I went back and I watched Snuffbox, which was the first thing I watched. I don't even know why it was the first thing I watched. I think it was because it was probably the most readily accessible. I think I heard of Garth Marenghi. I knew it was on YouTube, but it didn't really look like, I'm not a huge sci-fi fan. And, it looked hokey even for me. So I watched Snuffbox free through my local library, but I was only able to watch the first 5 episodes. But I knew after 20 minutes of the first episode, I'm like, okay, I'm buying this because it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, when I first realized, the intro to Snuffbox, there's music throughout the whole thing, that he was musical. I didn't really know the extent of it. And then Garth Marenghi was the next thing I watched, and One Track Lover, and then Toast of London. And I somehow managed to find the live version of Take My Hand, and I was like dead on hooked. I've been hooked ever since. The live version of Take My Hand, I probably listened to it on a loop three times
Aw.
a day for like 6 months. I mean,
Yeah.
it sucked me in.
It's so good.
Yeah,
It's so good.
it's so good. So that's my story. I started with Phantom Birds. That was the first one I bought. I have the red one. Nothing else was available for sale at the time on the Acid Jazz website.
Yeah.
Except
And then they
for-
did a big reissue of everything pretty much. It was so
Yeah,
awesome.
I think that the television themes, I think, was still available because I'd listened to everything on Spotify a billion times. I think television themes was still available for sale, but being an American, it's a little bit lost on me. But we'll talk about
totally
that
lost
more
on me.
That one's
in
coming.
Yeah.
a different episode.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Courtney, what was your
Episode 10 maybe.
Yeah, Courtney, what was your gateway drug?
For me, it was like a decade of near misses before I really discovered Matt. Because I used to watch The Mighty Boosh and Garth Marenghi's Dark Place at like 3 or 4 in the morning, no exaggeration, when I was in college. Adult Swim used to have a segment called the Brit Block that they would air in the middle of the night on Friday night. So I would come home, usually in some state of inebriation, and turn on the TV, and I had these like fuzzy memories of seeing these shows, but never really sought out more information. I don't think I ever saw the One Track Lover episode, because I think that would have done it for me.
That would have done it. Yeah.
That was definitely a near miss. If you watched all the other stuff and you didn't see that one, that's definitely a near miss.
I'm sure I would have remembered that. Because it
It's
would have been stuck in my head.
unforgettable.
It is unforgettable.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years after that, I watched The IT Crowd with a guy I was dating at the time. Relationship didn't last, but The IT Crowd stuck in my head. And for whatever
It's
reason,
all
I
that
just
matters.
The
Never-
relationships don't last. The IT crowd is forever.
Yeah. Exactly.
it was much better for me in the long term than that relationship
Yeah.
ever was. But I never really felt the urge to learn more about Matt. I don't know why, because I thought he was hilarious on it. I thought he was really cute, and just never went to IMDb, never Googled him. So, and he was that guy for so long that my husband actually owned a copy of the Snuffbox DVD that predated us ever getting together. And
Aw.
I at one point went through and organized all of our DVDs and knew we had it, but I never watched it because based on the DVD cover, I thought it was some sort of historical drama. And I was like, that's not really my thing.
That's so funny. We definitely have different versions
thanks.
then, I think.
Well, it's the two of them in like top hats and Victorian garb.
Oh, yeah, that's not the same one that I
Yeah.
have.
No.
Oh.
We have the American reissue version.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
So I was always kind of floating around Matt's orbit for years and couldn't have told you who he was, couldn't have told you his name. And then, like a lot of people, we started watching What We Do in the Shadows over lockdown and got hooked on that. Finally looked him up, finally started learning more about him. My husband and I then started watching Toast of London, and that was it for me. That was when I really just fell in. And I remember the moment that I wanted to learn more about Matt's music. It was that first, after the pilot, the first episode of Toast of London, where it has the first musical sequence, and the two actresses kind of do their piece to the tune of October Sun. I didn't know that at the time. And then Matt starts singing, and he has this beautiful, rich voice. And I was like, where did that come from? Wow.
that's
and-
a great episode.
I'd already read that he did music, and I think I just went to Spotify. I'm sure my first song was Take My Hand, because
Yeah.
it was the Toast of London theme song, and I wanted to hear more of that. And from there, I was just a convert. Kill the Wolf was my gateway drug. and the first album that I bought on vinyl too, the first Matt Berry album I bought on vinyl. Actually, Jesse was the one who twisted my arm into buying that.
The reissue. It was the reissue.
It was the reissue, I
yeah.
should say. Yeah, everything I own is a
bottle
reissue.
green vinyl.
Nice.
Yeah.
Still, so good they did that. I was like, come on.
It
like,
really
you have
is.
To. It's so hard to find them.
It really is. It's good, and I feel like maybe there was a whole new crop of fans that showed up. I don't know if it was because of What We Do in the Shadows, because he's not a household name here at all, and What We Do in the Shadows is the only thing that we get first. It has 3 of the UK's best comedic actors, yet we get it in the United States well before they get it. So it could be. I feel like there maybe is a new crop of fans, even though I technically knew who he was before that, only by a second. But maybe that's it. It's a good gateway. So
I just have to say, I have been a fan of Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords and Taika Waititi for so many years, since Flight of the Conchords, the TV show, came out. So I am like in love with Jermaine Clement. I think him and Brett McKenzie are just hilarious. And then when I found out that they were remaking and like doing a TV show for What We Do in the Shadows, and Matt Berry was going to be in it, I cannot tell you how much I lost my mind. Like, I just lost my mind. It was the most exciting thing I could ever think of, that like these 2 men who are just like, they're both really good musicians. Like, Flight of the Conchords has good music. I couldn't handle myself. So the fact that like that's what reeled you guys in, I love it.
Yeah, I never saw that movie.
I'm going to admit something really embarrassing, which is that I loved the movie. I saw it actually at a film festival before it even hit DVD, with Jermaine Clement in attendance and Taika Waititi zooming in. And so I was like evangelical about this movie for a long time. I showed it to everyone. But when they announced the series, I was really skeptical, because I was like, the movie is perfect. There's nothing that can improve on the movie. Why are they doing this? Is going to be a cheap ripoff. I'd never heard of anyone in it. Again, not really knowing who Matt was at that point. It premiered in Austin, where I live. I could have been in the same room as Matt. I could have breathed the same air.
Well, you were there because you work South by Southwest sometimes, right? So
I work South by Southwest, but at a different theater.
Yeah.
So I was across town, unfortunately, that night.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I didn't see the movie until after I started watching the series, but I know that a lot of people felt that way. The people that were huge fans of the movie were like, I don't know how this is going to work out as a series, and then they were slowly converted when they started watching it. So yeah, it's good if you haven't seen it.
I didn't worry. I didn't worry at all. I was like, Jermaine is friggin' hilarious, and Taika's hilarious, and Matt Berry's hilarious. Like, I had no worries at all. I didn't even know that people were worried about this. I'm so out of the loop. No, like, yeah.
Big fans in the movie were worried. I'm assuming that anybody that's listening to this podcast is fairly familiar with Matt Berry. We kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but I mean, if you're not familiar with him, he is an award-winning actor, comedic actor. He won a BAFTA for Toast of London. He won, what was it, a comedy writing award?
British Comedy Award.
British Comedy Award for, I don't remember what it was for. Do you remember?
I Regress, a radio series that he did.
That is correct. The I Regress radio series, which is also available on YouTube. Super funny. And then he graduated from Nottingham Trent University with a contemporary arts degree in 1997.
Well, it's fun. It's fun though, like, because the music, and this is what we love most about him. Really, is the music was always his passion.
Yes.
That was his number one passion. And he worked at the Tower of London in the dungeons, and he was some acting there.
He was the London Dungeon. The London Dungeon.
I feel like it was the Tower of London.
It wasn't the Tower of London.
Dungeon.
Tower of London is a historic site. He worked at the
I
London
thought
Dungeon.
it was there.
No.
I'm so sure it was there.
It wasn't there. It was the London Dungeon. So I was in
That's fair.
London. The last time I was in the UK, it was 1995. I went to visit my boyfriend that I was dating in high school. He was in the United States. I mean, he was in the UK. He lives there. He's British. We met at summer camp. So I went to visit him and his family over Christmas in 95, and we went to Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. And at the time, in the basement of the Wax Museum, there was this whole serial killer thing and it was amazing. So I think that actually closed. I don't think that it became the London Dungeon, but I think it's kind of like the London Dungeon took over and became kind of the same similar thing, all more immersive, like tours and stuff like that. So that's what he did when he did a bunch of temp jobs, and then worked at the London Dungeon, and then he, while he was working there, he was also doing a side gig, opening for the Mighty Boosh and for Matt Holness and Richard Ayoade at the Hen and Chickens, I think it was.
Hen and Chickens pub.
Yeah, he started out doing parody songs from the perspective of a serial killer, and I guess he was telling people where the bodies were buried, which I think is pretty hilarious. And then something about he used to wear a wig that looked exactly like his own hair, and at some point he would take off the wig and his real hair would be underneath, which I there's no video evidence of this that I'm aware of, but just thinking about it is hilarious.
I like that move. That's good. Yeah.
So many questions that brings up. Like, where did he acquire this wig? Did he commission this wig?
I don't
How
know.
did he afford a custom wig?
Did they make him wear it? They were like, here's your hair. It looks exactly like this wig. Put on the wig.
I think this was all him. I think this was
Okay.
I think this was his idea. So yeah, but his music was his first passion. He says that he loves comedy equally, but I think we're pretty, when he does interviews, when he's talking about music is when he is the most passionate and open. So
Absolutely.
we have a series of frequently asked questions. Interviewers always ask him, so let's just get that out of the
Always.
way.
We just
Every
want
time.
to kind of establish a baseline kind of level of
Yes.
knowledge about Matt, so we can talk about his
Yeah.
music without going back to the same points, because
Because we don't want to talk about this anymore. We want to talk about like anything but that. Like if we had a chance to sit Matt down, none of the questions you're about to hear would be on that interview.
Yeah, we
For
might
sure.
do
Matt,
it
if
as
you're
like,
listening, we
Yes.
would love the chance to sit you down and
Yes.
ask questions.
Yeah.
or any potential interviewers out there. Please don't ask these
Yeah.
questions anymore. If you want to ask these questions,
stop.
if you want to put it in like your summary before the interview, just kind of sum it up. But everybody knows
Yeah.
these things. Stop asking them. So
Just please stop.
for example, do you see yourself as an actor or a musician first? Do you always worry that people won't take your music seriously because of your acting? He always answers in the same way, that his music was his first love, and then he fell into comedy and acting by accident. And he says it's only in the UK that you can't do more than one thing at one time, which is actually not true, because I was actually talking to my sister, who doesn't know who Matt Berry is, and other than from what I've told her. And she's like, so is he a musician or is he an actor? I'm like, he's both. Why can't he be both? So there's that. Apparently it's not only in the UK where you can't be both things, although it's stupid. You should be.
One of the other questions which he is asked frequently, both in interviews about his music and his acting, is if his songs are supposed to be funny or he purposefully injects comedy into his music. The answer that he typically gives is no, and I think that's pretty self-apparent if you actually listen to his music. But that's kind of a no with an asterisk, because if you listen to his very early music, which we'll discuss in a minute, he clearly did start with more of a comedic intent and comedic influence.
Yeah.
That was something that he really grew out of as his albums evolved.
There were definitely parodies at the beginning. I mean, just the way he started, for sure, with the Hen and Chickens. Obviously, he was doing parodies at that time, because that's what his audience wanted. That's what he thought they expected of him, which, likely it is what they expected of him. And then Jackpot, as we're going to discuss in a minute, definitely has some jokey type parody elements to it. And then I think Opium too. I think that's maybe an unpopular opinion, but I think Opium has a few jokey moments in it. Could be why he doesn't like it. But I think what we were talking about earlier is even as far as Witch Hazel doesn't, but there is one song in particular that we're thinking of that probably does. But we'll discuss that at a later time.
We'll get there. So the answer is no, it's not comedy music, but you feel like there's times he just can't help himself, and especially
I don't think
early on.
now. I don't think now there's any question that it's not comedy. I think it definitely, from Witch Hazel on, all of his official acid jazz releases are definitely not comedy albums. They're serious. They're serious music. They're not jokey in any way, apart from the one song that we'll talk about in a later episode. But they're definitely serious. But Jackpot, and we only have a couple of things to base it on, so but it definitely falls under the parody heading, I think. The other thing people always ask is if his family is musical, if they had interest in music, how did he get involved in music? And no, his family wasn't musical. He didn't have a musical background at all. I think he said that his parents owned like one cassette tape, and it was cricketing bloopers, I think is what it was. I don't think they had any actual music records. But when he started showing an interest in music, his parents just put an organ in his room when he was a kid and left him on his own to pursue it. And that's what he did, which was really great. He pursued music on his own with no pressure from his parents. And I think that's a really good way to handle it. That's because he was able to harness his passion without any outside influence.
And then after teaching himself the organ, learned to play guitar, and from there bass and drums, which he said wasn't to show off or be flashy. It was just because he didn't really know a lot of other people who were interested in playing and wanted to create his own music. So he's completely self-taught and did it all, he says, out of necessity.
Yeah, necessity. And he also doesn't read music. So everything he learned, he plays by ear. And that's mostly the reason why he writes his own music, is because he doesn't read music. So he had to kind of come up with his own stuff and mess with music his own way, because he couldn't play anybody else's music.
Which is so cool. My husband's the same way.
It's amazing. It's an amazing talent to be able to just do that. I played clarinet in middle school, and I can read music, and I played terribly. I have no musical talent whatsoever. I love music. It's a shame. My middle sister and my mom and my grandmother are all very musical. My grandmother was an opera singer. My mom is a very gifted violin player. My younger sister plays multiple instruments. I have no musical talent whatsoever. So yeah, that's my sad story.
That's awesome, though. How did that skip you?
Well, there's also like a visual art side of my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family. And that's more my thing, more of a visual person, photography.
That's cool. At least you got something artistic.
I got something. And the first album he ever bought, he said, was Adam and the Ants, because his mom bought it for him. He liked it because
Thanks, Mom.
It looked like a pirate.
It was Adam and the Ants, Prince Charming, I think,
Charming,
in particular,
yes.
where he has the face paint across his face.
Right. He looked like a pirate.
Right. And one of the other questions that he is asked a lot is his favorite album, most influential album. He kind of typically gives a few answers here, but the one that he really defaults to the most and that he considers his favorite album of all time is Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells.
Yeah.
And talks about that as the album that inspired him to learn every instrument himself, because that's what Mike Oldfield did as a teenager on that album. So we are hoping down the line to talk more about Matt's influences, and I'm sure we'll be touching on Tubular Bells there, but
Yeah.
Tubular Bells, if you've never listened to it, that's the theme from The Exorcist. Everybody knows the theme from The Exorcist. Nobody knows, well, I mean, I didn't know, but other people probably do. But yeah, Mike Oldfield played every instrument on there when he was a teenager. And that's what Matt, I guess, saw the whole list of instruments that he played. He was 14 or 16 at the time. I don't know. His age varies occasionally.
Around there.
He was a teenager, and he said, well, I better get at it. If that's what he's doing at that age, I better get at it and start. And that's what he did.
Yeah, and I actually, I was reading an interview where he was talking about, and again, this is just going to be very bits and pieces because I don't remember 100%, but he was talking about how he went to a school where they wouldn't let him in to like the higher program, the higher musical program, because he couldn't read music. And he went on to say that he thinks, he almost thanks them for doing that because it forced him to like kind of go off on his own, learn things on his own. He didn't ever want to learn music. He was very okay with, I guess, not doing that. And I always found that very interesting that, maybe if he had gotten into that course, it would have kind of sucked the love of it out of him.
I think it was the musical theory part of it that he didn't have much interest in. And he thought it would actually take the magic and the fun out of it for him. So.
And speaking of his early music, what we are here to talk about during this first episode, besides our own love for Matt, is his very first musical effort that we know of. One that he has barely acknowledged existed, although he has slipped and discussed it at a few points. His first album, Jackpot. He did discuss in an interview in 2020, just a couple of years ago, that he recorded Jackpot starting in 1995, and that it was finally self-released in 2000. It was recorded at Barn Studio, which he talked about in this interview of Sound on Sound magazine. That was his parents' house. He said, I'm quoting here, "My mom and dad bought a very cheap, rundown animal food barn and turned it into a house over time, and I had a room in this converted thing, and that was my studio. My setup then had progressed slightly. I worked at Tesco, British supermarket, so I had a few quid. When I say I had a few quid, enough to spend on gear, I only spent my money on booze and musical equipment." That's very on brand, if you know anything about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the Sound on Sound interview from December of 2020. This is the last time, and there was a big gap, I think, between when he first, when he last discussed it. I want to say it was like 2009 or 2010 to 2020 is when he actually, I think at some point in between, he was just trying to completely bury it. Like, it doesn't exist. So,
or is nobody asking him about it? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if anybody cares but the super fans or even knows about it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He just, maybe they just don't know about it. So, the last time, his hot take, Matt's hot take, in a tweet from August 24th of 2009, said, "Jackpot just isn't good enough." I think somebody asked him, "What about Jackpot? Are you ever going to release it?" He said, quote, "Jackpot just isn't good enough. I may dust it down at some point, but hearing it just makes my toes curl like a cramp during intercoursing." He actually said intercoursing. Intercourse apostrophe
C-O-U-R-S apostrophe N.
Yes. So, yeah.
Bless him.
Bless him.
Wow.
Bless him. So, Jackpot. It is listed on Discogs officially. It says it was released in 2000. We think that it was recorded between 1995 and finally released. And by released, I think this was just probably maybe 24 copies. I mean, we have no way of knowing, but I'm guessing that it just went to his friends and family, because I just feel like at this point, if he was handing this disc out to strangers or acquaintances, somebody would have it. Somebody would have released it by now. It had to have just gone to his friends, close friends and family who know that he doesn't want it out there, and then just have kept it close to the vest. So, the label on Discogs, I mean, there's a picture, there's everything. The label is Rillington Players, which we think does not exist as far as we looked. We've looked.
We sure
we have not found any
no
information. There's 10 tracks. The track list goes intro, then A Bit of Pink, Alien Invasion, Ghosts Live, Trouser Department, which is one of the 2 songs that we are aware of, Jackpot, When Did You Last See Your Father, which is the second song that we know of that exists in the wild.
Yep.
Lonely Bird, Brighton Pier, and Dog Food Plus. It says it has a total runtime of 28 minutes, all titles by Matt Berry. And then the back of the album, in the notes on this, says this album was recorded at the Barnes Private Studio, Bedford, without interruption or love. I played everything. No samples or computer witchcraft were necessary, as there were enough pain and upset. I would also like to that my friends who are ill but wish me well in my pursuits. I myself am not well and am starting to realize it will all be over. It will all soon be over. Those who have opposed me can expect evil on a terrifying scale.
So
Just nonsense.
this
Just crazy
definitely
nonsense.
reads like something that a slightly pretentious art school student would write.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing that's
Yeah.
confusing, and maybe it could be a typo on Discogs, it could just be complete nonsense, is it says copyright 2000, and there's a second copyright that says 1976 Minky Music. I don't know what that means, and that 1976 really is puzzling because he was born in 1974, and pretty much everything that he labels, I mean, 1974, he notes it quite a bit in his
Yeah.
references on TV and in, other things. So I don't know. Maybe it doesn't exist.
It's
but-
total nonsense. The whole thing is just total
Yeah.
nonsense.
So
He
there-
didn't think anybody was ever gonna, like, the fact that even the title track and the cover is online, I think he is shocked by that. Truly. I think he's like, I don't know how this got out there.
Right. And somebody that's in the music group on Facebook actually reached out to one of the people that said that they have it, and they said they have it, they don't want to get rid of it. But there's also a note
Yeah.
on here that says, per Matt's manager and Acid Jazz founder, who's Eddie Pillar, Matt had officially, quote, embargoed this album, and he won't even let me hear it, end quote. When I said I had heard of 3 copies claimed on Discogs, he said they were misinformed or having a laugh. Sorry, folks, it doesn't seem we'll ever get to hear this one.
Breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It really does.
really
I
does.
really. And the thing is, like, I totally understand that he is not proud of this. This was at, the beginning of his career. He has come so far from even just Opium, which was just a much more polished album. But at the same time, I want to hear it so bad. And, like, the super fans are the only people that care. Nobody is going to ever look at that and judge him by it, in my opinion. So I just really wish that he would just let it be out there, because so I think we're going to play, let's maybe start with Trouser Department,
Yeah,
because
Let's start with
I
Trouser
want to,
Department.
yeah, because I think for this one, somebody has said, a source close to him has said that this was a precursor to Stuffbox, which Love is a Fool kind of came between those, but we have 3 different tracks. We have Trouser Department, where if, again, you're a super fan, which everybody listening to this is, you'll hear things in it that you'll hear from Love is a Fool, and then comes to kind of the end in Snuffbox.
All right. So Trouser Department. Let's go.
Now it all comes clear how I've wasted my time. I've lived my life in shame. For years I've been blind, and now I open my eyes, and what do I find? Good God. Good God. Good God. I've got what it takes in the trouser department. I've got what it takes. I don't need an enlargement. There are some snakes out in my garden. Oh, I've got what it takes.
I think it's such a jam. I really like it.
I really like it too. But, musically,
It's just, this is like such an earworm. I have this in my head quite often. don't need enlargement. It's very kind of quintessential Matt to me. I think it has a good beat. I like it, and at the same time, it has that like comedic tone and vulgar, like the vulgarity of it.
I've always
really
just
dig
assumed
that.
this was autobiographical.
Well, he does say that, you know, all of his music has some sort of autobiographical note to it, or it comes from stuff from his own life. So, you know, why shouldn't we believe that he has no issues in the childhood department? I'm just going to assume to believe that.
I
Need
believe
no
him.
enlargement.
No need for an enlargement.
I believe him.
Yeah, this song is definitely an earworm. Like, I had it stuck in my head all day on Thursday, and I was annoyed by it. But I do think musically, I think it's actually really good. I very much like this one. I like it musically. You know, the lyrics, jokey. They're not, his music isn't like that anymore, but you can definitely see when he started, I don't think he was real clear on what path he was going to take with music, and it's definitely jokey, not what he would do today. So I can get from this track particularly why he wouldn't want to
It's almost
revisit.
pure Matt to me, though. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but to me it's kind of just like his pure kind of nonsensical self. He was just doing music and seeing what worked and seeing what lyrics went with the tune and the beat. And I don't know, I love it. I absolutely love this song. And I absolutely like can hear where he got, like how he progressed from this to Love is a Fool and then, you know, ultimately Snuffbox. And I find it so cool to see this. And like that's why I'm so obsessed with hearing the rest of Jackpot. Not necessarily because I think it's going to be, you know, my next favorite album by him by any means. I just want to hear. I'm like, oh, you know, that sounds like this song or whatever. And just to see how he progressed, it would just make my life.
For sure, and he does do that. He repurposes music. You can tell a lot during Toast of London. He repurposed some songs from What We Do in the Shadows to Phantom Birds. So it is something that he does, and this very early on you can see his thought process, and you can tell even though they're not directly the same thing, they've morphed and they've transitioned into finished product. You can see how this is the idea, and then it progressed. So so here's the other song. Well, let's listen to When Did You Last See Your Father? I cannot get the title of the song right.
We always say something random that starts with when did, and then it's something about
keep
father.
wanting to say How You Met Your Father, which is very much not right. When did you last?
Although it's kind of the plot of the song. It does describe what's happening there.
It works.
This song is a hot mess. Anyway, when did you last see your father? This is it.
Roll it. I love the intro. I don't know. I find that really cool.
There's kind of a funky thing going on.
It very much is.
Super funky.
As another day was dawning, woken up with no warning. Who is this boy? You say you're my son. I'm afraid you're out of luck, pal, 'cause I'm moving into town now. Where is my hat? And who is your mum? But there's too little of me, not enough to spread around. I have a life of my own, selling magazines in town.
You can't see us, but Tara is jamming out right now.
Oh yeah, I love this.
There's no sense in me lying, I really don't care.
It's good. Like, come on, it's good.
I'm going to, I know this is a controversial opinion between all of us, But I'm going to just throw down the gauntlet that I think this is the better of the two songs. I think this is actually pretty good in a way that feels a little more fully realized than Trouser Department.
Absolutely.
I'm
not going to disagree with you.
I do disagree with you. I'm just going to say it. I disagree with you.
That's what we're here for.
It could just be my personal taste. I think this one's got a real 80s vibe to it.
Yeah.
And super unpopular opinion, I don't like 80s music. Never have.
Oh.
Never will. Don't like 80s music. I love like mid to late 60s. I love 70s music, especially like early mid 70s. That's kind of my wheelhouse. Skip over the 80s, go right to the 90s. Just
I get it.
Don't want
I get
anything
it in a
to do
way,
with
like,
80s.
Some of it's total shit, but I
Matt
dig
does
it.
love
the
his
corny.
synths. They're very apparent in
Yeah.
both of these songs.
Yeah, for sure. This song particularly is so confusing to me. Like, this kid shows up apparently, who is his son. He's like, "Who's your mom?" Or I'm sorry, "Who's your mom?" And then
Yeah,
he's
mum.
like, "Fuck off! I don't have room for you in my life because I gotta go sell magazines." Like, what? What is
busy guy.
happening here?
Busy guy.
Doesn't have room for his son because he's gotta go sell magazines. What?
But is that like storytelling of Matt's that we love so much? Like the kind of, nonsensical stories and
It's
like
a weak story.
kind of whimsical, you know? Okay, so this I find this song is like better than the other one, but I really like Trouser Department. That like gets stuck in my head. Like this song doesn't get stuck in my head. Trouser Department lives in my head rent free for sure.
It lives in my head rent free, and I want to evict it. This song, I don't want to evict.
Okay, that's fair.
The other
That's a
song's like
fair
a
take.
slaughter in my head.
Get
wanna
out of here.
Evict
Yeah.
Trouser Department, and the other one has never been stuck in my head because I don't think I've listened to it all the way through more than twice. Just because.
Oh, man. Are you
Not
crazy?
a fan. Not.
What? Oh my god.
Trouser Department. I like the music. I think the music is really good. I think he could like really.
Yeah, it's a jam.
I mean, I guess because that one transitioned into other things, but I don't think the other song has transitioned into anything. He's really
I
never
don't hear
explored-
anything in it.
It's not his sound.
No.
That's not a sound that he's, because if it was, I probably wouldn't listen to his music. So, if we're being honest.
Dang.
Yeah.
Hey, go for it, you know?
Hey, you know
We
what?
all have different opinions. That's the whole point.
I got
of
my
this.
opinions. Wait till we get to
Yeah.
opium. Wait.
No. You can't say anything bad about opium ever to me. It is like the best thing ever. I understand. I get it. But okay, so my favorite song of these is Trouser Department, even though I know that When Did You Last See Your Father is probably like musically and lyrically a bit,
I'm going to be the minority here. I'm going to own it. I appreciate the earworm qualities of Trouser Department. I appreciate the cockiness.
Yep.
See what I did?
Yeah.
But
Because it's about his penis.
That
That's what
totally
we're
went
talking
over
about his
my head
penis.
for a second.
Yeah.
but I just don't know that it's a very good song.
Yeah,
It's
little known-
theatrical.
A little known fact, Courtney is a big fan of songs about selling magazines.
I mean, I can't think of a whole lot of others.
It's a
But-
very small niche.
Yeah.
She's top of that fan group.
I enjoy
It's a really bad
magazines.
kink to have because there's so little in that field.
It really
Yeah.
is. That must be
A
really
lonely
tough.
fandom.
You have to just
Yeah.
cling to the song. I can't think of any
Yeah.
others. So
Okay, so we got your take, and I can appreciate that. We respect each other here.
wasn't
You
there
know?
another didn't he say something about polishing this one up? Oh,
Polishing
I
the
believe
turd.
the term was turd polishing.
turd
Yeah.
polishing. But he made some analogy. Didn't he make an analogy to a pot?
Oh my god, the pot analogy.
Oh, it
And we
says
have that quote here.
I'm trying
This
to
is
find the
from
quote.
A Velvet Onion interview. The Velvet Onion was a now defunct site devoted to alternative British comedy. Matt was a big supporter of theirs and did quite a few interviews with them. And in 2010, he was actually asked, I'm going to read the quote here, Witch Hazel was your third album, but your first, 1995's Jackpot. Again, the date's up for debate. Has long
Yeah.
been unavailable. Would it ever be something you'd consider reissuing? The few songs we've heard at the Velvet Onion are fantastic. Matt replied, I might reissue it one day. I'd have to tidy bits up and sack some other bits completely, though. For me, it's like a pot you made when you first started making pots. Pleased that you did it, but not ecstatic about it being looked at too closely. That is the analogy he chose.
I love
for
it.
this
And, like,
album.
You love it. But, like,
do.
we kind of think that he could have done better. Like, he's a wordsmith. He could have done better.
He's an award-winning comedy writer.
Yeah, but
And-
I mean, who doesn't understand that? You make a pot.
It's-
You're like,
yeah.
hey, it's okay, I made a pot. But you're excited. You're like, hey, look what I did. I made a pot. You show your friends and family, look, I made a pot. And then you don't want anybody to really look that closely at it because you see all their faults and mistakes and how it's
Very concise.
unpolished.
No.
I
Like,
think
we get it. We
it's
get it, but
completely-
also...
To the point. Yeah, very
Yeah.
concise.
Yeah.
I just don't see how it could have been better.
I
Personally.
don't know, but we're not like writers. We don't know how it could be better. We just, in our mind, we can be judgmental and be like, Matt, you could have done just a tiny bit better. You know, like,
You know, we all have days we're off our game.
I guess.
oh,
I don't
and
know.
I think he hates doing interviews a lot of the time. Truly, I get the impression that, you know, he does. I don't think I would like it either. If I became famous, I would frickin' hate it. I would be like, holy crap, first of all, I've told you 10 times what my favorite album was. Can you come up with something better? You know? I don't think it's fun to answer stuff all the time and have to come up with stuff. So I think on the fly, that's a good, you know, thing to come up with. But at the same time, we read it and we were just a little bit judgmental. And we are not very judgmental on Matt. Everything
That's
he
a
does
lie.
is gold. The whole point of this is that we have to be like a little bit judgmental, you know?
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
not the part that I don't know. I think it's fine. But I agree with the interviews. I think that he does seem basically when he does interviews, I think overall when people talk about his music, when they actually know about his music, he seems really
Yeah.
open and willing to talk about it. And he seems like he
Yeah.
gets genuinely excited when people ask him questions that he hasn't been asked before. Like, I don't know
Yep.
if it's just like, I'm not a journalist. I've never interviewed anyone. Hopefully that'll change in the course of this podcast. But I don't know if that's just something they have to do every time. I guess they're just giving background information for people who maybe don't know who he is, or maybe knew he was an actor but didn't know he was a musician. So they ask him these questions, which I just feel like it would be annoying to be asked the same exact
yeah.
questions anymore. Like,
I would be
if you're
annoyed.
going to interview somebody, do a little bit of research on them and find out, read other interviews for God's sakes, and you'll know that these questions will be asked a billion times. I just feel
Yeah.
like your words on this page in this interview can be more well spent if you do feel like people need a bit of a background, which is totally valid. Just put it in a paragraph at the
Yeah,
beginning.
put it in a paragraph.
Yeah,
Come
and
on.
You know, I wonder how little we know about Jackpot, I should say. How much of that is his reluctance to talk about it, and how much is the fact that interviewers just don't do their research and don't know that this
Yeah.
album exists?
Yeah,
That's
don't know.
what I think about a lot. I really wonder that a lot. Like, is it just that he, you know, because I mean, I'm sure a lot of the time, and again, I don't know shit about any of this, but I feel a lot of the time they probably show him what the questions are going to be. And a lot of the time he might be like, no, I don't want to talk about Jackpot. Or is it just all kind of on the fly and nobody asks him about this because nobody knows about this?
Yeah,
Nobody cares about this but us.
I don't know which way it is either. I don't know if he does get advanced questions, if he has put an embargo on certain questions. But you can tell from
Yeah.
that Sound on Sound interview, as late as December of 2020, he
Yeah.
did talk about Jackpot. The interviewer in that's a really, really great interview, especially if you're
Yep.
technically involved with music, because it does get very technical in certain places. The man loves a guitar pedal. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
He loves a guitar
I
pedal.
I do zone out a bit. Like, I try to like read everything, but I'm like, oh, I don't understand what he means by that certain kind of synthesizer. Like,
Yeah, it's very it's
over
that,
my head.
It's yeah, it really does. I have no knowledge of that stuff, but it is a really good interview, and it's really refreshing to see. Even though it does touch on some of the same stuff we see all the time, it just goes so much more in depth of who he is as a musician, where he started, and it's nice to see that. I just don't want to keep seeing these same questions over and over again because it feels like that takes up half the interview. And then you get
When he gets excited,
does get excited.
You like see, if you see, like, I feel like a lot of his and this might just be me thinking this, but I feel like for a lot of his acting stuff where he's getting the same kind of questions and interviews all the time, he's very blasé. He's very just kind of like, and he's not into it. And then I just love seeing or reading the interviews about his music because he's just so alive, and like you can really see that he is happy somebody has connected with his music, and I just love that. It's so genuine, and it gets me really happy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even when he is talking about acting, there's a difference between things that are close to him, things that he's been directly involved in. Like, he's much more apt and excited to talk about Toast of London than he is about like the IT Crowd or What We Do in the Shadows, because he doesn't have any writing input into either of those shows. Snuffbox, I can't really get his take on Snuffbox. I don't know if he half wishes it would just disappear or what.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's all him, and I think it's brilliant. And he definitely, it's just definitely, you can tell the difference between when he's talking about music with somebody who appreciates his music, and he can just see right through the bullshit meter of somebody who's done no research and doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Probably never listened to anything.
Yeah.
So if you are going to interview him, which maybe one day we'll have the chance to do,
I
take
wouldn't
some
hold your
notes.
breath, but yeah. Come on,
that-
Matt. Come on to our podcast.
That'll be the
because
end of our
we care.
podcast because we will have reached our pinnacle and we won't be able to go any
we're
further.
we can't talk about anything else. So do we have any closing
Well, we can spend like
comments?
6 episodes after that talking about our interview with Matt.
Yeah.
That's what would
Yeah, we'll
happen.
dissect minute
Just
by
dissect.
minute. We're
Can you
like,
believe that happened, guys?
yeah.
Pinching ourselves.
It would make our lives, and again, nobody would ever probably listen to it. They'd be like, well, if Matt came on our podcast, we'd have tens of 20s of listeners.
Well, right now we maybe have 5s of listeners, so we'll see. I do hope
We'll
that
see.
I think we'll get better. I do hope that we'll be able to do some interviews. There are a lot of Matt's bandmates are in the music group. A couple of them follow us on Instagram. So
wink, wink,
wink,
nudge, nudge. Come on our
wink.
podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of Matt's music, if you'd like to come on and discuss with us, maybe on a future episode, you can always reach out to us. We are at Obsessed Obscure on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So
Instagrams,
come on, follow us.
Follow
comment.
us,
Let us know what
like
you
us.
think.
Yeah. Suggestions.
Be nice, though. We've never done this before. We just love Matt so much and love his music so much. Let us know what you'd like to hear on it. We're just
We're fully open to
talk it out with
suggestions.
us.
Yes.
But also
please.
be kind, because we are fragile as all hell.
We're so
Yeah,
fragile.
huge egos.
Yeah.
We're obsessed and so insecure.
That's the next podcast name.
Our next podcast. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to our very first episode.
Yes. Our
and
next
making it to the
episode.
end.
Yes.
Our next episode, we will be discussing opium.
Woo!
Get ready for
so
some heated
psyched.
debate.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
contentious. Just letting
Because
you
I
know.
love it, and you're all wrong if you don't love every single part of it. So,
And I'll hold
leave
my
it at that.
opinion. It'll be a surprise.
all right, guys, this was so much fun. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Between 2 trees, I must have been 100 feet, but had no fear of it all.